All right, Year 12, welcome back to social and political debates. Last lesson we looked at climate change and the debates around greenhouse gas skeptics and those who believe that climate change is caused by humans and our greenhouse gas emissions. Today we're going to look at water management and in particular we're going to look at Wonthaggi Desalination Plant that's local to us here in Victoria and nice and close to Phillip Island. So this is an image of the Wonthaggi Desalination Plant. Hopefully we'll get out there later this year for a look around. But I just want to explain to you guys what the desalination plant is and how it actually works. So Wonthaggi Desal Plant is what you call a reverse osmosis desalination plant. And the basics of how that works are like this. So you have the water comes in. Sorry guys. Beautiful. So you have your water intake here. So the water gets sucked in, comes through these pipes. Now, the water gets sucked in at a really, really slow rate. And they say that it's that slow that living organisms and fish are able to swim against the current. So they're not getting trapped and sucked in. So once that water comes in through the intake tunnel, it hits the screening facility and then goes in for a pre-treatment. Not really important to you guys. The important part is this part here in the reverse osmosis membrane. Essentially, the salt water gets put through this membrane at a really, really, really high pressure. So super, super high pressure, and it's pumped through these filters. What that does is it removes all the salt and impurities, bacteria, things like that from the water. The water that comes out pure and good to drink comes through and goes to town water as drinking water. What you then have is you have this concentrate, which works its way through the out, and that's a concentrate of all the impurities and salt. So really, really salty, briny water. And that just gets pumped straight back in to the ocean. So we've spoken about it earlier on in 3.1.1. We spoke about things that make Australia unique. Now, we spoke about that Australia is the driest inhabited continent. So we've always had issues with water and the way that we manage and use our water here in Australia. So some background for you. Early 2000s, we went through a really, really big drought, and the Victorian government came in and thought they had to intervene. Our water catchment was doing really poorly, and they needed to try and safeguard Australia for the future in terms of giving everyone access to clean drinking water. So what happened is the Victorian government released a policy, and they named it Our Water, Our Future. All right, so Our Water, Our Future. Sorry, I don't know my highlight is playing up. And the Our Water, Our Future policy had all these different initiatives and things listed in it, and included in that document was the government's plan to source new clean drinking water. And they actually outlined the Wonthaggi Desalination Plant. So they said, going forward, in terms of water security, we are going to have to try and source clean water from other places. And they came up with building the Wonthaggi Desalination Plant to do this. So Watershed Victoria were the other side of this debate, and what they came forward as an interest group that were from the local community, and what they said was that the desalination plant was overkill. It didn't need to be built, and it was going to have a really, really negative effect on the natural environment in terms of the deforestation and land clearing to build it. In terms of the energy consumption, the plant uses a ridiculous amount of energy to run. And it was going to have to use some fossil fuels to do so, contributing to climate change. They're also concerned that around the corner from the desalination plant is the Bunurong Marine National Park. And if we were pumping the salty brine and impurities back into the water, Watershed were concerned with the adverse effects on the Marine National Park as well as the other local marine environment. This image here for you is from one side of the debate, which you can guess, and it's all about desalination plant and the effects of the desalination plant, talking about things such as the organisms that get sucked in, right through to how much extra it's going to cost a family per year, and talking about how much power it uses to produce this clean water. So if you want to, pause the video, have a look through, and this is directly related to Wonthaggi Desalination Plant, as you can see the reference to the Bass Coast there. Now for the important stuff and what I really want you to focus on. Again, this is what your study card should be focused on, and that's the summary of the debate. I'll zoom in a little bit for you here. Awesome. So we have the two sides. Remember, it's a debate, so it has to have two opposing views. So the political debate here, this is through the government. What they did is they produced the Our Water, Our Future policy, which had the desalination plan outlined in it and how it was going to safeguard Australia's future and water security. So their perceptions, remember our flow-on effect thinking, the perceptions here are that the environment was a resource. It was going to provide water for residents, for industrial use, but it was for the greater good of the community here in Victoria and Melbourne. Their interactions included things such as promoting safe behaviours. So during this, inside this water policy, Our Water, Our Future, policy, they promoted things such as water efficient appliances. That's where you see dishwashers and washing machines with a star rating and how energy efficient and water efficient they are. They were telling people use water tanks. They were telling people to try and minimise their water usage and be water wise in their everyday lives. The impacts of their side of the debate were they were going to improve levels of storage for our water, and they were going to safeguard Australia because they didn't know going forward how we were going to manage with another drought like we had in the early 2000s. The adverse effects or the negative effects of the Wonthaggi desalination plant and their policy were the unknown impacts that it was going to have on the local marine environment, and particularly the Marine National Park there, the Bunurong National Park. If we look at the social side of the debate, we're talking about Your Water, Your Say, who later became Watershed, formed by interest groups to protect the local environment down there at Wonthaggi. All right. And they were saying that we need to try water saving techniques before we do things like this. We need to up our recycling and conservation, I suppose, making sure people had water tanks and we weren't wasting water, and we were being really, really savvy with the way that we used our water and we recycled it. They were saying we didn't need to have a desalination plant in Wonthaggi because if we did all these proper practices in our water saving techniques, there would be no need for it, and therefore have a much smaller impact on the environment. This user group perceived the environment as someone that needs to be protected and someone that's not a limitless resource. Their interactions, they actually campaigned against the desalination plant, very similar to what the conflict we looked at with the Franklin. Interest groups came forward and they were trying to fight the government, the Victorian government, and stop them from building the Wonthaggi desalination plant. They were trying to capture, recycle, and save water wherever they possibly could. And the impacts of this were that they were going to, again, they thought they would improve their water storage levels, but at the same time, they were going to be maintaining and protecting the biodiversity of the marine and coastal environment, as well as lowering the CO2 emissions that the Wonthaggi desalination plant would have. Please go through and watch this video again, pause and note take, and I will see you guys in our next Microsoft Teams meeting.